Hi everyone, I'm Emily, founder of Focal Point Bookkeepers. And in this video, we are going to review your profit and loss, or otherwise known as your income statement, to understand how well your business is performing. Your profit and loss is mainly all of the money that you made, all of your expenses, and then calculation of your business's net income. So in the previous video, and if you haven't watched that, I'll link to it to ensure you've integrated your bank and categorize your transactions from your bank feed. That is a crucial preliminary step to being able to review not only your P&L, but any of your reports inside of QuickBooks. So I'm going to jump over to that tab to start, because it is important that you confirm that all of these transactions have been reviewed and added to your bank register. Anything that appears in this tab will not appear on your reports. So that's very important thing to understand right from the get-go, is that everything in here has to be pushed through and confirmed for it to appear in a report. So with my business checking, I can see that I've got all of my transactions categorized. In my business savings account, you'll notice here I've got a 2, and I've got a couple of transactions that do need to be categorized here. So it's important to know that if you aren't ready to categorize these yet, and you do want to look at your reports, that they're only going to be accurate through the dates prior to this. I can also, one thing that I like to do, so this is a deposit. I'm going to add an unknown. Category here, so that I'm not leaving it blank. And then if you recall from the chart of accounts, we have a category called suspense, which is for anything that you're not sure where it should be categorized. And you do still want to review your reports or reconcile your books. You can push these transactions through using these generic unknown for the vendor or the patient and suspense for the category. And we'll see that when we pull through the report as well. And let's do the same thing for this. So now with my banking transactions all pushed through my bank feed, I can hop over into the reports, and most likely you'll see them pre-populated as favorites. These 3: profit and loss, balance sheet, and accounts receivable aging summary. If you can't find it, you can just type profit and loss up into the search tab, or scroll down and you'll see a plethora of report options, which can be a little bit overwhelming at first. So let's just click into this profit and loss. The default here for the reporting period is this year to date. We can leave that as is, or you can alter this to see whatever date range is appropriate. If you've got a couple, so it's almost middle of July now. If you've got a few for July in there that you haven't categorized and they're in your bank feed, You can run this through the end of the prior month. And then your reports will still be accurate since you're not pushing into that July date where you haven't categorized transactions yet. I'm going to leave all of this selected to the default here and then run my report. Okay, so now we are looking at profit and loss report for the first half of the year, January through June. And we can see we've got a few main categories here: income, revenue, cost of goods sold, which are direct expenses, and expenses, which are indirect expenses, also known as overhead. We take your income and your revenue, subtract the cost of goods sold to get a gross profit, and then we subtract all of the overhead or indirect expenses to arrive at net operating income. So I'm going to dig into these major sections a little bit each to hopefully help some understanding with how this report is structured. Income revenue accounts pretty straightforward. Anything that is generating income or revenue for your practice, so mainly patient fees, are going to be recorded here. Below that, cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold are directly correlated to your revenue. That means that these expenses are necessary to generate this revenue. If these expenses go away, your revenue will decrease by a correlated amount. For example, the biggest category here is any wages that you're paying for counseling staff who are working directly with patients. Say you reduce or one of your counselors leaves, there is going to be a correlated decrease in your revenue. So these things are tied to each other. And this is really the big one. There's some dollars here in supplies and equipment. One example of this could be perhaps a software that you're using that is also tied to patient users. So maybe it's a one-to-one. For every patient you have, you're paying increased fees, or for every batch of patients that you have, there's increased fees. Again, a direct correlation to your revenue. The more patients you have, the greater these expenses are. So that being said, your gross profit is kind of a true profit, a true indication of revenue, because you can't have this without these expenses. They're necessary to generate that revenue. Now below, overhead expenses are not directly correlated to your income. A good example of that, nice straightforward example, is rent. Your rent expense every month for your practice space is not going to change whether you have one patient or 1,000 patients. That will remain the same. Your income, your revenue is not dependent at all on that expense. So there can be a case made for some of these being correlated more to income, but for simplicity's sake, we are going to use this structure to align to industry standards. So below your indirect expenses, you've got this suspense account. So recall that we pushed some transactions through your bank feed and coded them to suspense. So you'll see those here, and it's an indication that these need to be placed in a proper category. So your reporting is still pulling in these transactions, but they do still need to be reviewed. And you can click right into the dollars here. This will open up a report and show you all of the transactions that are inside of that account. So if I now know that this deposit is revenue, I'm going to change this to my all patients account and then place it into my revenue account. Then I can save and close to go back to the previous screen. If you hit save and new, it's going to bring up a template, blank template for whatever screen that you're in. So in this case, it's a deposit. So we're going to hit save and close. And then the next time I'm in a transaction like this, this last selection that I made will be the one that appears here. It's a sticky setting, it's called. So now I refresh this and I see that I've only got one transaction left in here. And let's go ahead and categorize this. So you'll see that this template is an expense template. And let's just say this is Capital One. Just like in the bank feed, we can add payees vendor names on the fly. And we'll say this is a bank fee. And now you'll notice I've got save and close as the default here. And I refresh my report and there's nothing left. So I can go back to my summary report and I'll be on a refreshed P&L with those transactions now categorized to the appropriate account. A couple other important things to note here. These numbers do require a little bit of scrutiny. Everyone makes human errors from time to time, and the technology and the automation can also, perhaps there's a rule that's outdated and something's categorizing in a way that it no longer makes sense. It's always important to do a bit of analysis on these numbers to have an understanding and the confidence really that these are accurate. One really helpful way to do that is to display columns by month. So we're running this report for January through June. If I do by month and click run report, I'm going to get a column for every month, January through June. So this data set is completely made up numbers. So you'll notice now that when I run this by month, I have no data in January, February, March. But we can look at the months that we do have data here just to kind of go through some of the questions that would be helpful to ask yourself when you're looking through your profit and loss and analyzing your data a bit. Going by month, you can start to see a trend. So if your practice has had no changes, no big changes in these months, you would expect to see your revenue be generally the same month across month. So if you're looking at all of the months grouped together, it will be impossible for you to tell and make any sort of connection on the trend. When you break it out by month, you can see here, this would be a big red flag, right? Like, whoa, why was my revenue so much higher in May? Like that doesn't really make sense. I didn't see more patients and have this amount of an increase in this particular month. And then you can go click into it and do a bit of auditing and see why that might be the case. And then when I get into the details of this account, I can see clearly here, oh my gosh, these are duplicated. So I've got two exactly the same transactions here, which is going to lead to errors in my reporting. So in this case, a number of transactions would need to be removed because they're duplicates. And just a few clicks, a little bit of investigating can go a long way in the confidence that you have in these numbers and running your report and understanding the profitability of your business. So split it out by month, look over all of these accounts, and if anything raises a bit of a flag and you're like, oof, wow, that really doesn't make sense as to why that number is so high or so low, you can click into it and just investigate what transactions are in there. Perhaps there's a little bit of cleanup that needs to be done to remove duplicates in this case that we just saw. Or perhaps it's something where you're like, oh, why did this go up so much? And when you get into the transaction report for everything inside of that account, it reminds you, oh, that's right, I did have a bump in this. I had to pay an annual fee in this month, perhaps, and that's why the account is so much higher than it is in the previous months. One other tip, other than just looking for accounts that have red flags and don't make sense, is just to spot check a few. Just pick them at random and look into the transactions and just kind of do a common sense check of like, okay, yep, those were all expenses that we made. Yes, that looks accurate. It's just a safeguard auditing tip. And then you will have a lot more confidence and understanding of how these reports are working. One other helpful thing is to collapse all of these accounts. So any of the sub accounts are just going to be rolled up into the main parent account here. So that can just be a nice little summary without all of the granular detail. You can also, if I expand this out, if you want to see what category has the most, let me go back to the total, has the highest expense in it. So now you see that all of our indirect overhead expenses are listed from greatest to least. Just a tip to make things a little bit easier to find inside of this report. Okay, so that is the general overview of how to generate your profit and loss statement and how to do a bit of analysis and digging to ensure that you are confident in the accuracy of this report and your numbers. It's one thing to be able to run a report, and it's another thing to be confident in the results and the numbers that it is reporting. So feeling that confidence is really what you want. And I hope that this video has helped you to achieve that result. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but the next level of understanding the performance of your business is to not only look at your numbers on a regular basis and to look at the trends going from month to month, but then to compare your practice to the performance of other practices that are like yours. So this is called benchmarking, and you can start to compare your percentages. What's your gross profit percent against your competition? And that really is then what gives you an idea of the performance of your business comparative to others in the industry. If this is something you're interested in, it is something that we love to help our clients with, so don't hesitate to reach out. And congratulations for getting through this video and this video series to set up your QuickBooks account from scratch, and now being able to look at the performance and the profitability of your business. So good job, and I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks. Have a great day.